everyone. Vanakkam, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good evening. Welcome to the first AmCham Sri Lanka signature IPR session for the year, featuring refreshing insights and ideas on intellectual property rights and how they can be leveraged to reinvent your business, especially in challenging times. Our expert speaker this evening, a recipient of the Top 50 Emerging IP Players Award last year, has spent many an hour delving deep into IPR and identifying what he sees as IPR extended values. I would, of course, be lying if I were to say that our topic is not somewhat COVID related, because let's be honest, every innovation or adaptation nowadays is COVID-19 related, in as much as it has been put into developmental fast forward due to the sheer extent and gravity of the crisis that C-19 has brought upon us. So much so that maybe going down in history, the term necessity is the mother of all invention might have to change to COVID is the mother of all invention. But the reality is that evolving and adapting is a constant in any business environment, even a bullish one, if we were to stay bullish. So today, a look at what IPR can do to help you reinvent your business to survive the storm, any storm. What is IPR? What is an IP enabling environment? What does it mean for businesses? How do you think out of the box and leverage on IPR to claim opportunity? All this and more coming right up with our IPR consultant, Revan Veerasinghe, attorney at law, an independent legal practitioner specializing in the areas of intellectual property, information security, company law, and commercial transactions. Revan, good evening. Welcome to the AmCham platform.
Good evening, Rai. Thank you for this invitation and thank you for that kind introduction. Today I'm going to tackle something that is in everybody's heart, something that everyone's grappling with, every business nowadays is grappling with. How do you survive COVID-19? How does your business survive COVID-19? And how do you ensure that your business survives this season? Today I'm going to talk primarily about three storms. Let me share my screen first. So reinventing business to survive the storm is the heading of today's session. Now, we are currently going through a storm. I mean, COVID-19 is a storm. It's rupturing all our businesses. It's put us into quite a conundrum. I mean, I consult daily to various types of businesses, and the problems they face are very, very serious. Some of the smaller companies do not know how they are going to survive this quarter, how they are going to pay their employees, how they are going to pay the banks, how they are going to survive. It's a matter of survival. Because COVID-19 has changed the way we do everything. COVID-19 has changed the way we operate. There is no inflow of business. It's affected the inflow of business, and it's affected everything, primarily everything. I mean, if you talk to some of the smaller companies, like I consult to a school, students cannot congregate. Students cannot come to classrooms, as a result of which parents themselves do not find the reason, the incentive to pay on time. They themselves are hard stuck for money. So cash flow is one of the biggest problems that we deal with today. And when cash flow gets stuck, the business itself is stuck in being unable to pay for its salaries, in unable to pay for its expenses as they come due. So most businesses are hard stuck. If you look at people in the hotel industry, if you look at people in the airline industry, they don't know how they are going to make payments. They don't know how they're going to pay their leases. They don't know how they're going to pay their mortgages. And these are big problems. And as a result of this, spin-off from this is there comes a time where retrenchment takes place. More and more people are retrenched as time goes on. And that itself affects cash flow, which has a spin-off effect. And the problems go on and on. So today I'm going to focus on three storms that you and I will have to face. And let's face reality, these storms are going to hit us, and these storms are hitting us primarily as we talk. The first one of these storms is COVID-19. Sadly, there are more storms to come, and which I will go into in time to come. COVID-19 has affected the way we do business. COVID-19 is something that is real, and we do not know when it will end. Some vaccines are due next year. Hopefully they will be effective, and hopefully they will curtail this problem. A lot of people call this the new normal. A lot of people say that this is the problem that we are going to face in time to come. How do we face it? And how do we ensure that our businesses survive so we can keep our economy alive, so we can continue to pay people salaries, so we can continue to have ongoing business? How does that happen? How do we even deal with this problem? Where do we start dealing with this problem? Businesses are at tether's end. The employees cannot come to business. People cannot congregate. People cannot have meetings together. Let's look at the hotel industry. The hotels are, most of them are non-functional. Thankfully, some of them have pivoted and created quarantine centers, and they are able to continue their business. Let's look at restaurants. How are restaurants going to manage if their staff gets sick? When their staff gets sick, will they be shut down? Will the press carry statements saying, okay, this restaurant has had 3 employees who are COVID patients? What then would be the stigma attached to that restaurant? What then would be the stigma attached to that hotel? Would people want to go there in the new norm? Can business continue? But business has to continue. And if business fails to continue, we are all in a mess. So how do we get through this conundrum? The second storm I'd like to come to terms with is far more real than even COVID-19. And even though COVID-19 has precipitated this next storm, we'll have to face this storm as a country. We'll have to face this storm together, and we'll have to face new and modern ways of trying to overcome this storm. I talk about an economic crisis that might happen, could happen, and may happen the world over. This financial crisis at the moment is looming. Everyone talks about it. It's in every newspaper you read. It's in every news station. They talk about the looming economic crisis. And this looming economic crisis is precipitated through a lot of factors. COVID-19 is one. Businesses failing to meet ends meet is one. Debt, looming debt, and one's inability to pay off this debt is another 4 factor that will result in this economic crisis that may or may not happen. At the moment, companies are finding it very hard to pay off their employees. And this situation might get worse. It comes as a result of low consumer demand, low economic activity, low investment, rising borrowing, and extensive debt. How do we overcome this, and how do we overcome it together? These are questions that we all have. I do not have the solutions for this. I'm not going to present a detailed step-by-step process on each business, but I will set forth through my presentation a series of steps that you could put in place to leverage on innovation, to leverage on intellectual property to get out of this crisis. Now that is a feat. Let's see whether I could bring you a solution that may be relevant. The third problem, which is a larger problem and a more looming crisis that we are going to face, is that of relevance. Now, yes, we are going through an economic crisis, we are going through a financial crunch. Relevance is something that will come in time to come, especially pertaining to third world countries. And the sad thing is all these storms are coming together. Now, what I mean by relevance is something that Sri Lanka may have been facing for some time. We look at giant players in the market that are coming alive. You're looking at China, you're looking at India, you're looking at other competing countries to that of Sri Lanka. Now, if you look at China, you know that China has invested in mega giant factories, massive agriculture plantations. Same with India. India has a growing population that is increasingly getting more and more skilled. The education levels are very high, and with a population of 1.3 billion where India is concerned and 1.4 billion where China is concerned, they have economy of scale. Economy of scale means that you can produce an article or a unit of production at a cheaper price than your competitors, simply because you have that unit, that economy of scale that enables you to do that. If you have a giant factory that makes 1 million units of a certain garment, whereas you compare it with a factory that does 10,000, the company that does 1 million would be able to sell its produce far cheaper than the company that sells its production at 10,000 units. That is economy of scale, and that is a harsh reality that every developing country has to come to terms with. Sri Lanka is going to more so face this problem in time to come, especially when we have this looming, some would say, debt crisis. Some would say debt crisis, some would say financial crunch. We would, in the face of COVID, in the face of this financial crunch, and in the face of staying competitive and staying relevant, we have a task ahead of us, because we have to compete with the big boys. We have to compete with China and India. We have to compete with Bangladesh. We have to compete with the region. We have to compete with the rest of Asia. We have to compete with the rest of the world. And if you look at our key exports, we are talking about garments, we are talking about software, we are talking about tea, rubber, coconut. Can we meet the demand? We're talking about spices, we're talking about minerals. Can we meet the demand, and can we sell our produce at a price point that is cheaper than China and India, that has massive agricultural lands, that has big factories that are able to sell their produce at a much cheaper price point than Sri Lanka? That is the conundrum that we face. How do we overcome that? Well, a lot of companies have excelled in this. You look at our garment industries, they're competing in terms of expertise and in terms of giving value addition. But is that value addition enough to compete with these countries? Now, a harsh reality is you also see some of our countries moving out because of the cheaper cost of labor that is found in the region. And that is another harsh reality that we have to face. Our labor component is getting very, very costly. How do we face this? Now, my next session next week, I'm going to talk about how intellectual property enables people to sell at a higher price point, simply because you bring value to the table. But there lies the answer. The answer lies in value creation. A company in Sri Lanka can take to one of two strategies. You can go and compete with the rest of the world at a cheaper price point, which is something we've been doing for the longest time. We've been commodity sellers and we've been trying to compete at the cheapest price point. The other strategy that has been invoked by the West and since this is AmCham America, is that you focus on value creation. You focus on creating more and more value that can be sold at a higher price point. That may be the strategy that Sri Lanka needs to go to be able to compete with these countries that are able to sell our same produce at a cheaper price point in time to come. Let's get on with the presentation. What do we do then? Well, we can stay with our head in the sand, or we can pivot. We can redevelop our processes and move forward strategically. We can have our head buried in the sand, or we can create innovative companies. Now, this is easier said than done, this innovative company. I mean, I'm sure all of you all are businessmen and all of you all have thought, how do we innovate? How do we get out of this problem? You all have had extensive board meetings trying to decide on what to do next, right? I do not stand here trying to give you all a solution on what to do next. I do not know your business. But I do know that a thinking company is a company that can brace the storm, a company that can be able to pivot and pivot fast. Now, this is jargon that you should be telling me as a businessman, but however, as someone who specializes in intellectual property, let me put forward the key processes that you need to enable in your company to be able to pivot fast enough to be able to brace the storm. How do we change our core structure to that of an innovative company? Well, the answer here lies with the meaning of the word innovation. The Webster Dictionary says innovation means introducing or using new ideas or methods, having new ideas about how something can be done. And the Oxford Dictionary says the action or process of innovating. Okay, so we all know innovate, a new method, a new idea, a new product. So the question rises, and I'm sure most of you all must be thinking at the moment, Revan, it's easier said than done to talk about innovation, but when you're cash strapped and you don't know when your next income is going to come, how do you innovate, right? How do you set up infrastructure for innovation? How do you set up a team for innovation? We do not have the bandwidth for that. This is an impossible task. I mean, it's good on paper, but it makes no sense. Let's think about it a bit further. What does it take for a company to be innovative? Does it take a CEO with an inventive mindset? Yes, it does. Or a scientist with a thirst for research? Maybe a patent attorney amongst your team of on your board, or a team of researchers. Is that what it takes for a company to be inventive? Is that what it takes to be able to brace the storm? I'm still looking at faces that probably have an expression of being aghast. This makes no sense. No. What does it take? It takes a paradigm shift. It takes a paradigm shift for a Sri Lankan company to think, let's face the storm. The storm is coming. These 3 storms are coming. There's no way you can go away from the storm. These storms are coming. But how do we face the storm? How do we face the storm to be able to pivot? To be able to be relevant. Because now the problem is relevancy. Relevancy is the biggest problem. Post-COVID, the biggest problem is relevancy. Now let's look at the relevancy when it comes to a restaurant or a hotel or an airline. An airline may not be relevant now. At this current juncture, people aren't flying, right? Only very few are taken to the air. How do airlines survive? How do hotels survive? People do not have budgets. People aren't spending. People are being frugal. People do not want to spend to be able to go to expensive hotels. People do not want to go to expensive restaurants. How do these restaurants survive? Now that is the problem. But then what is the paradigm shift that I'm talking about? Well, the first thing that you have to realize is that you cannot just put your head in the sand. You have to innovate. You have to face the storm. I'd say that is the first paradigm shift that needs to be done. You cannot play the waiting game and try and wait out the storm. You need to be able to innovate. And one sure way of being able to innovate is to get teams together and ask, how do we overcome this problem? Now, is that innovation that I'm talking about? Common sense. We'll go on. Anyone can innovate. It's not expensive to innovate. That is the first paradigm shift that you need to think about. Right? I come from a company that does great science. Yes, I'm not putting that down. You do need researchers, you do need scientists, they do fantastic work. But a boardroom can innovate. A group of people that are running a school can innovate. I advise a school that is currently innovating, and I'm proud to see the fact that the way they have innovated, they have brought in different ways of engaging with their students, different ways of everything is online. And that is a step that everyone has to make at some time. The second paradigm shift that you need to inculcate or need to understand that is it is not expensive to innovate. Right? You don't need massive innovation budgets. You don't need millions upon millions to innovate, you need an innovative mindset. And that is something that most board of directors, I'm sorry to say, are lacking or should inculcate further. Innovation does not take time. Now, this is a beautiful statement. Innovation does not take time. It takes making time to think. How often does an average company take time to think about its problems? How much mind time has been allocated for that purpose? How often does the board of directors or the management get together to say, okay, we are facing this problem. How do we overcome it? Now, I know sales people out there do find different ways of doing it, and I'm not putting anybody else down now. But now is the time for change. Now, and this change is coming. I think COVID has been something that has precipitated this change in a great sense. And in every industry, you see this precipitation of change happening. I see it in the court setup. I see lawyers congregating together to see how they are going to innovate, how they're going to bring in new processes to bring about this change, how courtrooms are going to function from now. How is cross-examination going to function? How are daily cases going to be heard? Now, lawyers are doing that. Hospitals are doing that. Schools are most definitely doing that. Companies need to do the same because you need to face these three storms that I spoke about. Let's first face COVID. We need to face this moving forward. And you only need a budget, a scientific budget, when you decide on your next step. But what I want to tell you is that first and foremost, the first thing you need to inculcate in your organization is an innovative mindset, a questioning mindset, a common sense mindset. Those are the fundamentals of innovation. Moving forward. Today I'm going to present to you an innovative company. In my mindset, in my vision, what I consider an innovative company. It's a company that values idea generation. It values idea evaluation. It has a strong base of information security, where its ideas aren't stolen or leaked out to the market. It has in its ambit an IP enabling environment. And it strongly leverages on intellectual property for the purpose of generating profit and opportunity. Take a look at this blueprint of what I propose companies should be to face the storm. Now, everyone talks about innovative companies. I will tell you the blueprints or the foundations or the cornerstones that need to go in for a company to be innovative. And if you follow that process, then hopefully you will come up with something different to be able to face the storm. Because every company faces a different storm. A school faces a different storm, a restaurant faces a different storm, a hotel faces a different storm. People who do delivery of goods and services face a different storm, especially now with COVID-19, especially now with employees getting sick on a regular basis. Hopefully that will never happen to people's companies, but this is the harsh reality in which we live in. We are in a situation of crisis. I'm not just saying this for effect, but we are in a situation of crisis. So either we pivot and we face the storm, or we go down with the storm. But the thing is, our economy as Sri Lankans, our economy cannot afford to go down with the storm. We need to be relevant. Our companies need to be relevant. Our companies need to survive. So for that, a key element, a key fundamental is idea generation. Idea generation is a fundamental requirement, and there is a need for this paradigm shift. There is a need for busy directors to take time out and identify the problems of the industry, the problems that they are facing now and the problems that they are going to face in time to come. If they fail to do that, then we will go down with the storm. But however, if they do face the problems, the storms that are to come, they can pivot and they can be relevant in an ever increasing, ever dynamic new business environment. So let's go on to what idea generation is. First, keep in mind these 5 pillars, these 5 cornerstones of a new and more dynamic, challenging company. This paradigm shift is essential, but this paradigm shift may not be possible with people who are not willing to change. Your board of directors need to see the storm. They need to see the storm that is coming their way. Whatever that storm may be and however it's going to affect your company, you need to have eyes on the road. Just as a pilot who's going through the storm, you need to be relevant. You need to know what the storm is. So that is the first step you take in idea generation. You identify the problem. Now, a book that I advise all of you all to take notice of is the Intellectual Property Act number 36 of 2003. It's very easily written, and it sets out all your intellectual property tools that can be used to remain relevant. Now, the Intellectual Property Act sets out a definition for the word invention. Now, I was talking about innovation, and I went to the Oxford Dictionary and all that, but honestly, I find the best definition for invention is given in the Intellectual Property Act. Invention means an idea of an inventor which permits in practice the solution to a specific problem in the field of technology. It's a very basic definition. It's of an idea. It speaks of an idea. And that idea is the solution to a specific problem in the field of technology. And that is where you should start in re-engineering, re-innovating your business. You start with the problem. Now, whilst we are on the subject of facing the storm, this method can be used to develop new markets or solve existing problems on how to face the storm. Right? A company that is innovative and is wanting to go into new markets will first focus on what's the problem their consumers have. For example, if you're a textile manufacturing company that does sportswear, the first thing you need to do is you need to interview sportsmen. You need to interview people on the ground that are about to wear your clothing. Now, these sportsmen, if you interview the sportsmen, they'll have various problems. They'll have problems like the material starts smelling after a while. The material starts ripping after a while. The dye oozes out after a while. Or they may have problems, that is, the material shrinks. If you're a hotelier and you're running a group of hotels, problems that we may find now in the new normal is that the problem of bed sheets. Maybe one way of overcoming that problem is to allow your customers to bring their own bed sheets. Or you have a way of certifying sanitization, a way of showing those customers that those bed sheets, those towels, those utensils that are used are of a certain hygienic standard. Maybe certification is a need as per the new normal. So you need to start with the problem, whatever industry you're in. Be it a school, one of the biggest problems children in schools have is congregation. Classrooms are small now. If you have classrooms of 40 students in a classroom, there's a higher possibility of infection happening than rather having 10 students. Then what do? Now Zoom suddenly feel this need, and everybody's on Zoom. Teachers now educate on Zoom, and it is a chosen methodology for auditing. It is a means to an end. But then that business might change altogether. You might not need classrooms in time to come. That is, if things don't change, let's be optimistic, things will change. But it is necessary to identify your problem, right? And like I said, this is whether you're creating new products, new innovations, you're going into new territories, you're creating new opportunities. All this method can be used to address existing problems. So you start with the problem, right? What is the problem? What are the solutions? Now, any board of directors or management can do this. You get together and you brainstorm. Now, I'd like to ask you this question. How often in your company does brainstorming happen in addressing problems? People come up with various solutions. People come up with various ideas. But the secret, the essence to coming up with a groundbreaking idea is to identify the problems that you have in industry. Because if you have that problem, chances has it that everyone else in that industry has that problem, or everyone else in the demographic has that problem. If shirts have a problem that the dye oozes out, then many garments have that problem. So first identify the problem, brainstorm and figure out what are the solutions. Now after that leaves you with an interesting choice to make. Your company might come together and come up with a number of solutions to existing problems that are found in your business. Or they might come up with so many solutions that might present good opportunities. But then the question arises, do you license that or do you develop that? Now, facing COVID, many companies have chosen to license various new forms of technology. Zoom is one. Many companies are now getting the premium version of Zoom because they find it as an enabling tool of communication. Many productivity apps are downloaded and licensed by people so that project management can happen more effectively. So there is a greater use, there is a greater move towards licensing more and more innovative ways of doing business. But the question, once again, I'd like to ask you is how much time do you take out of your busy schedules? I know most people now are firefighting. Everyone is firefighting. How do they get that cash flow in? But can you take time out from your busy schedules to address the root of the problem and find solutions that will address that problem? And then you need to make the choice, do you license or do you develop? Now, the reason I said that is to license a product is much cheaper, right? There is less time to implement. The developer takes the risk. You don't take the risk of development, you just license something, right? And it's the easiest thing to do. In a time of crisis, it is the most sensible thing to do. But however, if you're to be an innovative company, you may also see opportunity in developing a product or process and making that your advantage. Making that something that customers find as a reason to come to your business. Being more innovative, bring more value addition to your product will obviously increase your market potential. It will increase your market penetration and it will increase your relevance. So this is a choice that most companies need to do in this whole aspect of idea generation. They need to decide on a couple of solutions, what do we pick, shortlist it, and then decide, do we license it or do we develop it in-house? The advantages of developing are you can increase your profit, right? If you have the technology or innovation to yourself, you can generate passive income by licensing it out. You can create a monopoly for your business by being the most relevant person in that industry thanks to your invention. Because only you provide it. No one else provides it. Because you have that intellectual property attached to it. If you develop it in-house, if you create IP. Now, if you license it, there is no IP that you own, but if you develop something, you own IP yourself. And that may result in possible passive income, massive passive income. But now that we are facing a storm, I guess it's more sensible to license technology rather than going into a deep dive of innovation. But either way, the choice to license or develop both fall within the ambit of innovation. The ambit of pivoting to face the storm. It falls within the ambit of an innovative company. What is the innovation here? You're looking for new and better ways of doing business. You're keeping yourself relevant to face an ever-changing market, to face an ever-changing storm. These storms are not going to go away. Even if they go away, they'll take a different shape. We might face new storms next year. Everyone says 2020 was the worst year of their lifetimes. Maybe 2021 may be worse. So it may be completely different and so much better. But one common factor is the future is uncertain. Our companies now need to take a different, more dynamic shape to be able to cater to the storm and to be able to cater to business. I'd like to go back to that example of China and India. Right? Those countries are able to sell produce at much cheaper price points than Sri Lankans. How do we address that problem? We need to be either cheaper than them, which I don't have an answer to, or we need to create more value. We need to create more value. And the only way we can create more value is to innovate. Our companies need to change their way of thinking and they need to be more dynamic. Idea evaluation and selection of idea for product creation. Now, once again, we go back to this boardroom or table with all your employees around. You will first identify the problem, or you will identify the opportunity. And most opportunities are related to the problem. It's a problem in society that casts an opportunity. It's the problems that society has that creates opportunity for industry. So you will brainstorm these opportunities and people will put forward their ideas. Those ideas, like I said, could be ideas to license certain technology, or it could be ideas to develop certain technologies. Then you look at the potential of what that technology would look like. You would envisage that technology. How do you get that technology? If you want to create a mobile phone, you would envisage the different components that form part of that mobile phone. You will put that together and then you will devise your product. Now this is the standard template for product development. But I'll ask you that question, how many companies do this? How many companies go through this filtering process? I know a lot of companies are comfortable in their way of doing things. They are comfortable selling commodities. There are profits coming in. There is business inflow. Why change? Why change at all? That's a very good question. Why change at all? But the answer to that is we live in a dynamic time, in a turbulent time. There might be a reason to change in order to remain relevant. Moving on. The next step in this innovative company is you need to create an IP enabling environment within your organization. What is the IP enabling environment? An IP enabling environment is an environment where your employees are willing to share their ideas, where the employees are willing to come up with new innovative ways of doing business, where your employees have a vested interest in sharing their ideas. Now this is a common problem I find in business. I find in Sri Lankan businesses, where the employees do not come forward with their ideas. Now this may happen for many reasons. Some employees might think, look, I don't own the company, there's nothing I get out of this, right? Or some might come up with the mindset of someone else is anyway going to take the credit for this. Why should I share my ideas? Why should I come forward and share this idea if someone else is going to run with it? What do I personally gain by coming out with this idea? Do I actually get the credit for coming out with this idea? Finally, this would be pitched to the board by the CEO. I will not get any credit for this. I'm sad to say, but this is how possibly people think. If you look at the literature, this is how people think, and this is the reality that companies face in creating innovation. And this is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for creating innovation. What do you do about it? Now, if you go into the literature, there is merit in creating what's known as the IP policy document. An IP policy document, now this will change from time to time. It will change from company to company, but it will set out how an employee is credited for, is acknowledged for coming up with invention, with coming up with a solution or coming up with innovation, right? This policy document is supported by what's known as the invention disclosure form. An invention disclosure form is just proof or record of that someone has innovated something or come up with an idea, right? This can take the form of groundbreaking innovation in terms of research and development, or it can take the form of something less, a business process, a more modern way of, a more relevant way of meeting with your clients, a more relevant way of addressing issues that the company faces. It may be anything. So when you have access to an invention disclosure form, if this is a novel idea, that employee's name goes against the form. And it is proof or record that this idea was conceptualized by such a person. And it was shared at such a time. Right? Your invention disclosure forms can have various forms of other attributes to it. It can say, you can make the employee share what are the research papers they used to come up with this, what was the inspiration to come up with this, where else is this found in industry? Is this found anywhere else in industry? What are the patents they relied on? Does this technology exist anywhere else? All that can be disclosed in your invention disclosure form. An IP policy document says that, now it's up to each company if they want to enable this, but essentially you set out in your IP policy document what incentives you would give someone if one of their inventions or one of their solutions or products are ever taken to a marketplace, are ever commercialized. Does that employee get a certain percentage from that innovation? If so, you would suddenly find a greater level of sharing within your organization, a greater level of trust. I would find trust is one of the biggest issues that is found within organizations. Employees do not trust the organization enough, and I'm not talking about any organization. Yeah, I'm just saying in general, this is human nature, to be able to share their most personal ideas. But there is value. There is value that is left on the table and it's untouched for generations maybe. Sometimes, most often than not, dies with the inventor because of this issue of trust. Let's move on, given that we are running out of time. The next fundamental that you need to build in an innovative company is how to create an infrastructure of information security. Now, the way I see it, there are 4 main pillars for information security, right, that a company can leverage on. Firstly, you can leverage on statutory protection that is afforded in terms of the Intellectual Property Act, right? You can file patents, you can file industrial designs, you can file copyrights, you can file trademarks. Those are the 4 major headings of intellectual property, right? A patent governs an invention. An industrial design governs the shape of a product, like the Coke bottle, it has a very unique shape. Copyrights govern software, it governs literature, it governs paintings, articles, any form of literature, as long as it is fixated on a medium, as long as it has been fixated on a medium such as paper or a canvas or a photograph has been taken. Then you have trademarks, which are business identifiers. We all know what trademarks are. And this statutory protection enables information security because you own this information. The moment you patent your idea, you own that idea. You claim it for yourself. You make claims on that idea. And patents is one of the most powerful tools to claim an idea. Then Section 160, subsection 6 of the IP Act, which I do not have time to go into, deals with commercial espionage. If your information has been stolen, if your information by a forcible act, if someone breaks into your company, or maybe one of your employees steals it and goes and sets up a competing company, as long as it's proprietary information and doesn't form part of the public domain, you should be able to sue under Section 160, subsection 6 of the IP Act and get an injunction preventing someone from profiting or commercializing your proprietary information. But the critical ingredient to that information needs to be proprietary. It needs to be yours, right? The second the second pillar of information security is to set within your organization fairly integral or essential agreements to ensure that your information is protected. One is a non-disclosure agreement that we are all familiar with. Material transfer agreements, which says that if you are sharing information to a third party, I am giving you 10 samples of this garment or textile which is novel and innovative and does not exist anywhere else in the market. Please acknowledge delivery of this. You and I will enter into a material transfer agreement to say that I am handing over this proprietary information to you. Labor and service contracts need to have confidentiality components. License agreements govern sharing of software, etc. And it controls the way that software is used. Policy documents within organizations are essential. Their IP policy is essential. A confidentiality policy is essential. I spoke about an IP policy before that enables employees to share more freely their ideas. Confidentiality policy sets out what belongs to the company. What is you need to define what information is yours, what information is proprietary, what information has been created within. But the safest way of building in information security in your company is through access control. Not all your employees need to know everything at any given time, right? There has to be a right to know basis for knowing information. Not everyone needs to know your proprietary information. Not everyone needs to know your innovation, right? To do that, practical steps you can take is you can classify your documents. Who has access to what can be set out, right? You can have fingerprint scanners that allow certain people to access certain information at a certain time, right? Not everyone needs to go into your labs or your very safe space, right? And sometimes you can sign an NDA upon entry. The next thing that you have to set out in your organization is, now say you develop something. Now let's go back to idea generation. Through idea generation, you create something. And you create something, you do not license it. It does not belong to, this is something you have created. You create something either to penetrate a market, either to be relevant in a new industry, to create opportunity. You create a technology or a product. Now, how do you take it to a global marketplace? For an innovative company, you need to have the skill set to be able to create an IP strategy. your employees or your think tank or your business or your management needs to be able to create an IP strategy for whatever that is developed in-house. Where are you going to take it? To which countries are you going to take it? How you're going to protect it? Needs to be set out in an IP strategy document. Or it needs to be thought of at large. Now, a lot of companies have what's known as a technology transfer office. More innovative companies, more R&D centric companies have what's known as the technology transfer office, where they have lawyers that will come in and immediately catch on to that idea, protect it, patent it, get an industrial design for it, trademark it, identify the copyright material, keep that under lock and key, realize what's your trade secret, keep that under lock and key, and then detail a strategy on how you're going to take this to a global marketplace, not just a Sri Lankan marketplace, but a global marketplace. If our companies have to be relevant moving into the future, you need to be able to realize how you're going to take our homegrown technology to a global marketplace. So for that, you need to use the whole gamut of the IP Act, right? Your think tank or needs to be able to leverage on maybe a lawyer to be able to first protect your intellectual property through all these different methods that is found in the IP Act. Then you need to plan how you're going to take your IP to a global marketplace without A, your IP getting stolen, B, without getting sued. Now that is not easy. Now if you look at the patent suits that took place with regards to smartphones, it is really funny, and it is an eye-opener, because you realize that this phone can actually be broken into maybe 1,000 different pieces of IP. And each of those 1,000 different pieces of IP belongs to a different party. And each of those parties, some of those companies just have that IP, but they license it across the world, right? And they sit at home earning passive income by just licensing that IP across the world. But they are very vigilant. They remain very vigilant to see whether their intellectual property gets copied and used by third party without a license. That is their entire business model. So if you foolhardily create intellectual property at home and expect to go into a global marketplace, you try to enter a mature intellectual property market like the US, you might not be able to do so. You will get sued, right? So what you need to do is you need at the very onset, at the very start, at the identifying opportunity to start, at this stage, you need to think IP. You need to look and see where lies your opportunity. And what is patentable? Where do you have copyright? Where do you have an industrial design? You need to identify your IP. You can go hand in hand with a lawyer to do that, but you need to identify your IP, then you need to protect it. Then you need to penetrate markets. Now, penetrating markets is not easy, especially if you're looking at a patent. You need to have a patent strategy on which countries you want to go in. Say you created a new garment or a new textile of some form, you need to figure out how you're going to take it to which country, and that needs to be done within 12 months of your first patent. So one strategy is you may file in Sri Lanka first, and then within 12 months file it elsewhere in the world. Then you need to think at the very onset how you're going to generate profit. Are you going to license it? Are you going to sell it? Are you going to franchise it? You need to decide what is your business model for exploiting IP and generating profits. That needs to be done at the onset. To do this, you need to be able to think of what is the potential of your intellectual property at the very onset. At the state of identifying opportunity, you need to look at potential. Can I get an IP for this? A lot of people go into research and development without realizing that they are reinventing the wheel. There's no point in reinventing the wheel, especially when you're facing a storm like what we are doing at the moment. A country like Sri Lanka has no leeway to dump money on useless IP or useless research. you need to be intelligent as to what you're going to innovate. You need to figure out what you're going to innovate and is it possible to get an intellectual property protection for it. Then you need to go ahead and protect it. And IP is not merely a sword, but it's a shield as well. You need to be able to prevent your IP from getting stolen. If you just go file patents and you're not able to protect it, then there is no point. There is absolutely no point. Your IP will just remain in an office and it will be useless. You need to be able to enter into agreements for profit. Those agreements need to be carefully determined. Are you going to license it? Are you going to hold it as your own and move into a market with that commercial advantage? Or are you going to enter into, what's the license agreement you're going to enter into? Are you going to go in through a non-exclusive license or an exclusive license? All that needs to be thought of. If not, do not go into R&D because you might waste money. I do not have time to go into this, but there is a lot of things that you need to do to be able to create groundbreaking innovation, right? And that does not come at much of a cost. It comes by being smart. If you're licensing something or if you're creating something in-house, you need to identify who, say you're creating something in-house. You need to identify what you're going to create, what IP exists already in that sphere that you're going to create. You need to know the prior art, what already exists. If you go outside of that, you will get sued and you're just wasting your time. You might as well just license that piece of technology, right? Then you need to go ahead and protect it to be able to leverage on maximum on that monopoly you get through intellectual property. If you're acquiring IP from third parties, you need to be very careful on from whom you're going to acquire this IP. Do they in turn have this IP? Do they own this IP? Otherwise, you're just going to in turn get sued. You need to do due diligence. Our companies need to be smarter in order to survive. Prevention of penetration of markets. What are the target markets? What are the demographics you're going to target? What is your patent strategy? Are you going through a trade secret or are you going to patent it? If you're taking a piece of technology to a mature intellectual property marketplace, you need to do freedom to operate search to see whether your patent exists or not. It's all due diligence. Guys, it's all due diligence. If you do your due diligence properly, you can make massive profits and you can gain in passive income. What is your method of exploitation? Are you going to, what's your method of license? All that needs to be thought of. And to end with, you can create an IP strategy, right? What is an IP strategy document? IP strategy document is a pedigree document that goes in for any piece of innovation, any invention. It sets out your proof of novelty, your proof of pedigree. It helps in finding investors. It helps in licensing your technology out. It helps in assigning your invention. It ensures novelty and patentability. Every company should look at its invention, at its research and development as almost like a business plan. You need to set out why it's novel. You need to do that patent search. You need to do extensive hours of patent search because you actually save a lot of money if you do extensive patent search. Because then you'll ensure that your technology is novel. And if you are novel, then the sky is the limit. Because the problem that your demographic in Sri Lanka faces is the same problem that will be faced all around the world. And the more novel your technology is, the greater profit you can make by selling that technology or licensing that technology. You can sit at home and just make that passive income by just licensing that technology to the largest possible demographic. You can find investors as long as you have IP. If you have IP, most investors will say yes, but then you need to show them the novelty of your invention. You need to show them that invention is completely novel. And that can be done for very cheap. You need not have expensive patent attorneys doing the search for you. There is Google Patents, there is the USPTO Patent Office, there is the European Patent Office. They all have very robust, very easy to use websites that will enable you to look and see whether this IP is available or not, whether it already exists or not. Do not invest in technology that already exists, just license it. Do not waste your time. Then you can finally, once you do the due diligence and it's completely worth doing it, then you can find investors and license this to the world. That is what our Sri Lankan companies should be doing, and which is what we are not doing. But all it takes is your ability to put time behind this, put effort behind this, put your interns to use, make your company dynamic, make your company think. We need to create smart companies. We need to create thinking companies. If we fail to create thinking companies, we will fall by the wayside. We will succumb to the storm. But if we create those thinking companies, the sky is the limit. This country would go from third world to first world very, very easily. We have the resources to do that. We have the natural resources to do that. As Sri Lankans, we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing with our minerals? Why are we selling them at bulk without any value addition? What are we doing with this beautiful country that we have been given? We are just sitting we are just sitting back and watching it waste away. When all it takes is a little bit of brainstorming, a little bit of thinking outside the box, a little bit of identifying where does the problem lie? What is the problem in technology that we need to solve? What are the problems in technology? What are the problems in business? What are the problems our industries have? The moment you identify that, you will be able to make your company relevant. And relevancy is what we need. Right? I don't know whether I went out of time, but open it up for questions.
Just a tiny bit, but thank you. Definitely food for thought and a lot of thinking to happen there. One request that we have is that we share the slide pack with our participants. Let's work on that in time for the next session. Part 2 is, of course, Revan, I hope this is okay with you as well. I couldn't confirm it previously. We'd like to have part 2 of our IPR session on the 3rd of December, which is next Thursday, where Revan will pick up from what he's spoken about today. Revan, maybe you want to give a quick teaser into what we plan to speak about next week.
Yeah, so today was about facing the storm, which I think is more relevant than what I'm going to talk about next time. But next time is all about finding opportunity in IP and how IP can be the greatest possible tool for economic development. And since this is AmCham, let's take a look at America. We all use on a day-to-day basis American products, and and if you look at some of the products that we use regularly, be it Facebook, be it Google, be it even I'm not putting forward America here just because I'm on AmCham, but if you break down some of the US products that we all use on a day-to-day basis, and if you ask yourself why America, with a population of just 300 million people, right, is more successful in industry than China and India and all those countries put together, the answer to that question is IP. They leverage on IP more than anyone else. Well, the Japanese are doing a fantastic job at it, but any country that is successful because it leverages extensively on intellectual property. And if you break down all the companies that I just spoke of, right, what they have invested on mostly is intellectual property. In terms of copyright, in terms of patents, in terms of industrial designs, worst case scenario, they have top brands, and that is trademarks. That is all IP. So next session, I'm going to talk about how you can profit from IP, which is something that our companies really need to take a grip of. That IP is a key. It is a very, very potent key.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. So participants, audience members, there you have it. That's what we have to look forward to next week. Of course, the link for registration will be shared with you via our normal channels, the bulletin board, the WhatsApp alerts, and of course our social media. Revan, thank you. Thanks for taking the time and the effort. I know you put a lot of work into this and a lot of thought into sort of expanding on what IPR is and the extension of what IPR can do in weathering the storm, and not just, I think, surviving the storm, but thriving through and post it. So thank you very much on behalf of AmCham and of course on behalf of our participants. We appreciate your time and of course you're sharing your expertise with us. To all our participants, thank you for taking the time. We do look forward to seeing you again next week. Shanik De Silva, your comment is noted. This is of course why AmCham is looking at taking a front line in topics like this, because definitely this is a message that needs to be brought out as much as to the business community as of course to the policymakers, and that's where we hope to make a change by advocating in these areas. So thank you once again to everybody. I hope you have a blessed and pleasant evening. Do stay safe. On behalf of the AmCham team, on behalf of the AmCham Secretariat, and of course on behalf of Revan as well, stay safe and we'll see you again next week. Good evening and Aiboan.